actually. So the fourth module, it is about production function. So that is what we are going to see today. So when I talk about production function, like normally, production function is nothing but it is it is a theory which studies about the what to say the relationship between the input and output, like how the input combinations are used and how it is being determined. So in some cases, like there are theories which will be explaining with one particular input and how that input is bringing a change in the total output. Or in some cases, there will be multiple inputs used and how they are be bringing the changes. So there are lots of theories. We will see all the theories. So we have a law of variable proportion. We have a law of returns to scale. All these things. So before that, there is some concept related to production function and produces equilibrium. So which I just want to take it today. And this is same or like a similar like the consumer's equilibrium point. So in a consumer equilibrium, if you remember, like it will be having an indifference curve. So a downward sloping curve, which will be showing a combination of two commodities, which will be giving the consumer the same level of satisfaction. So same like that, here we have a Isocon curves. So that indifference curve, here it is named as Isocon curve. And there like there were a budget line or price line. So here we have a factor price line, or again, like very technically speaking, they are called as the ISO cost lines. So ISO cost lines are taken, and the intersection point of isocon curve and ISO cost line, we call it as a producer equilibrium point. So this is what we are going to see today. So all these things, like it is a familiar concept only, but different technical names is being provided. That is the difference. Okay. So producer's equilibrium, to start with, like producer equilibrium, it has a isocon and isocost, isocon curve and isocost line. So that is a concept. So we know but again, like when we talk about the production function, there are four factors of productions. Okay, namely land, labor, capital, and organization, or entrepreneurship, we call this. Okay, so this red mark are the four important factors of production. So if you take all other things comes under these only. So land, labor, capital, and organization. And land is being paid rent, labor is paid wages, capital is paid interest, and entrepreneur or organization is paid with profit. So these are the remunerations which we pay to these factors of productions. And all the like not only these variables, but there are other variables also, like inputs. When we talk about inputs, it will be like the raw materials that we are using in it. Okay, so again, when we talk about, like, there are many related concepts. Like when you talk about raw material, the storages we have to talk about, the transportations we have to talk about. Even after final products, we have to see how it has been transported to the marketplace, and sales promotional activities which are taken into. All these are inputs which will be providing us a output. So input, like when we say, there are many things, but broadly speaking, there are four factors of production, four inputs used in the production process called land, labor, capital, and organization. So this is the production function. The relationship is like, by using all these inputs, how much of output that we are going to get it. And to explain the concepts clearly and easily, again, in economics, if four factors are being taken into, we don't have a proper way of explaining it. If it is a mathematical solutions, there it won't be a problem. Hello. Okay, fine. So I'm just continuing again. Sorry. By using this, like in economics, like it is difficult to have all the four variables in study. Like if it is a mathematical solution, there you can have n number of variables. You can use n number of variables in it, like x, y, z. Likewise, it will be going on. But economics, like you can always take two variables at a time, and only we can see the relation of two variables. So in many cases, like if you see some traditional theories, it will be taking land as an important concept and labor as an important concept. So only land and labor will be taken, and it may have studied. And after like some developments or some criticisms which were there on economic theories, after all those criticisms, land and capital was taken into account. So labor and capital was taken into account. So labor as a manpower, like they were considered as a separate factor, and capital, like all other things like land, entrepreneur, all the materials that we can get it, the machines, the tools, the raw material, the transportation cost, the marketing cost, all this can be achieved through capital. So they have taken labor and capital, and that through these two important factors, they might have explained the theories. So wherever you go with, like wherever you want to go and see production theories, only these two concepts will be there. So here also we are just taking labor and capital. Okay, so two important factors it's been taken into for the step. So producer's equilibrium. So producer equilibrium, it is the same like consumer equilibrium. So a consumer equilibrium is a point where the indifference curve and the price line are tangential to each other. Same like the producer equilibrium is a point where isocon curves and isocost lines are tangential to each other. So that is the point of producer's equilibrium. So if you get that point, you can get the producer's equilibrium point. So to start with, the very first one is the isocon curves. So isocon curves, like you know, this is what is isocon curve. Like you have an isocon curve, isocon 1, isocon 2. So all these are isocon curves. Again, this one curve represents a combination of two different factors of production, which will be yielding the same level of same level of output. Satisfaction is for the consumer. Producer, it is the output. Okay, so which will be yielding or which will be producing the same level of output. Like for example, you can take this IQ curve. So this IQ is the first level of production. This level of production is like by using various combinations, 100 units can be produced. Okay, 100 units of some product. You can take any product. So it says that you can produce 100 units of a particular product. If you are going to be at point A, by using 9 units of capital and 5 units of labor, you can produce 100 units. At point B, by using 6 units and 10 units of labor, you can produce the same 100. And again, here also, like if you see C point, 4 units of capital and 5 units of labor can be used and produce the same 100 units. So A, B, C, D, like they are different combinations of capital and input labor, which can be used in the production process. But as they are in the same isocon curve, it indicates that they will be producing 100 units of a particular product. But these combination, again, here it is not based on the preferences, but here based on our capacity, we can choose it. Like for example, if you're going to choose A, it means that you're going to use more of capital and less of labor. And if you have, like if you belong to a particular country or if you belong to a particular region where capital is more cheaper and labor is costlier, there you can go with this combination. Okay, so normally, like if you take any Western economies, they will be going with point A, which indicates that, like we know that the Western economies are capitally rich, like they are capitalist countries, in fact, and they will be having more of capital. So they will go with the combination of A, where they will be investing using more of capital, less of labor. Why? Because in their economy, the labor source is very minimum. So this again, like we call it as a capital intensive production. Another technical term. Capital intensive means using more of capital and less of labor. So intensive means depending more on that particular factor. So capital intensive means using more of capital and less of labor and making a production. Or like it can be like you can choose a point D. So point D, it represents that more of labor, like 20 units of labor is used in the place of 20 labors, and only 3 units of capital is used. So this is like using more of labor and less of capital in making a production process. So these choices or these combinations can be done by the countries which is having more of labor. Or normally a developing economy, if you take, they will go for this. Like if you take an economy like India, where the labor are very huge, we will go with this combination where less of technology and more of labor will be used. Why? Because we have to provide employment opportunities to labor, and we'll be going with this technology. So, but what is this concept? Is this Isocon curve? Is that whether you're choosing a combination A or whether you're going to choose a combination B, this is going to yield a same level of output only. And in the same time, one more thing you have to understand, like you cannot make a production with any one particular input alone. Like you need a combination of input. So you cannot say like I will completely use labor alone and I will make a production, or you cannot say that I will use completely capital alone and I will be making a production. Always the combination is needed. Same like, okay. But here you have to take it from the producer's point of view. So this is what happens. And here also you can see that initially the capital will be sacrificed at a very high rate, and then the capital will be sacrificed or substituted at the lower rates. So this is also similar like the indifference curve. So in indifference curve, we call it as a marginal rate of substitution. Here we call it as a marginal rate of technical substitution. So an economy which is having a huge capital, they will be ready to sacrifice a huge amount of capital to get an amount of labor. Why? Because for them labor is scarce. So at the beginning they will be ready to pay a very huge amount for the labor. But after that, after a certain point, what happens is that they will not be demanding more of labor. So the unit of substitution of capital to labor will come down. So initially, when there is no labor at all for them, that time they will be ready to sacrifice more of their capital. So that is the concept. So this happens even in modern world. Like you can see an economy which is having a more of capital, and again like capital alone, like we cannot function with, we need the labor source. So to employ the laborers, they will be ready to pay a very huge amount in the initial stage when the labor is scarce in their economy. But in the same way, like when labor have started to work on it, they slowly they will reduce that like the need, the substitution level. Technically, they will not be ready to substitute more of capital for labor. But when it is scarce, they will be ready for. So that is what it has been explained here. Okay. So same like indifference curve, everything you can relate it with indifference curve. Same likewise here, the technical terms are different. That's all. So this 100 units of production, it indicates that like through combination of capital and labor, it can be of any combination, it will be yielding a same output. But the combination that you are going to choose, it depends purely upon what is the capacity of your country or your area where you are going to start your business. So based on that, you can choose it. So it can be in capital intensive, which means that you are going to use more of capital, or it can be a labor intensive, which means that you are going to use more of labor. or in between, if you are going to choose some D and dot, it means that it is a neutral economy, neutral style of where the capital as well as the labor, they are used in the same proportion, or they are used equally. Okay, so that can also happen. Again, like what type of economy we are, what type of business that we are going to do with, all these will be deciding upon the combinations. So again, this IQ, IQ1, IQ2, it indicates the isocon map. Okay, so as same as what you have it there in difference map. Same likewise here also we have isocon map. So isocon map, again it indicates that in a rightward shift in the isocon curve, like from Q to Q1, Q1 to Q2, it indicates that higher level of production. Okay, in consumer equilibrium, we used to say higher level of satisfaction, but here it is higher level of production. So the same concept is explained here also. So in a rightward shift shows a higher level of production. So this is what is in isocon map. So isocon map is also explained. Now we have taken. So same like the properties. Okay, properties actually I'm not mentioning it here, but same like the properties also, you can have the same property, like no isocon curve can touch either axis. Like you cannot have a isocon curve touching the x-axis, or you cannot have a y-axis, and you cannot have an isocon touching the x-axis. Again, it indicates that go like you can make your production with one particular input, one particular factor. That is not at all possible. You need the combination of labor and capital that is needed. So that cannot be done. And in the same way, like no two indifference curve can cut each other, or they can be tangential to each other. Why? Because two isocon curves will be showing a same level of production at the point where it is intersecting or touching. Okay, tangential. So that is again not possible. If there is two different indifference curve, the production level should also be two different levels only. Like you cannot have a same level of production. So cutting or intersecting is also not possible. So a rightward shift in the indifference curve, isocon curve always shows a higher level of production. Okay. So this is what all the properties also you can relate it and you can study. Then comes the ISO cost line. So ISO cost line is the same like the price line there. Okay, so here you can see input Y and input X. Again, instead of Y and X, you can have it as capital and labor itself. Okay, no need to make any changes. So we are having Q1, Q2, Q3, three ISO cost lines. So what is the indication is that, like for example, if I'm going to start a business and I'm having 1 lakh in my hand. Okay, so if this 1 lakh, if I'm going to spend on capital alone, then it will be like what is the maximum capital that I can utilize it. So that maximum limit. The same way, if this 1 lakh is going to be paid as a wages for the labor alone, what is the maximum of labor that I can hire it? So that maximum limit is on the x-axis. So joining these two will be giving the ISO cost line. So ISO cost line is simply nothing but my investment capacity as a producer. If I'm going to be the producer, what is my investment capacity? That can be determined by this ISO cost line. So how to draw the ISO cost line? You can take two different inputs, and the maximum, if it is going to be spent on one particular input, what is the maximum limit? And the same amount, if it is completely going to spend on another input, what is the maximum limit? You can find the maximum limit and join those two extreme points, and you can get an ISO cost line. So this ISO cost line is nothing but this is my investment capacity, or this is my actually limit. I cannot go beyond this limit. So that is the concept. Then comes the producer cyclical. So here I can take. Okay, so here this this 200, this is the Isocon curve, and these lines are isocost lines. Here, why, like one more point you have to keep it there. It was like there was only one price line, and we were having lot many indifference curve. And then that we were choosing the equilibrium point. Why? Because there the main aim is that with the money that is there in my hand, like if I'm having 1,000 rupees, with that 1,000 rupees, how much I can purchase, which will be giving a maximum satisfaction. That was a main consideration. But here, as a producer, it will not be like based on your investment, but it will be like there will be a target which you have to produce in. Like for example, they can give that in this month you have to produce 200 units of a particular commodity. In that case, to achieve that target, what is the investment that I should have? Okay, or what will be the best combination of capital and labor, which will be yielding me or making me to make that production, to reach that production, like what is the combination needed. So that will be the concept in our mind. That's why you can see that here you are having only one isocon curve. Okay, so one isocon curve, 200 units it's given, which means that this particular producer, he wants to produce, or he should produce 200 units for this particular month. So how much should be his investment? You can just roughly take it as EFS 1 lakh, GHS 2 lakh, KPH like a 3 lakh. Okay, so 3 lakh of like different combinations of there. So this is the production unit. So both these, like normally as the consumer equilibrium, here also for producer equilibrium, the factor price line. Okay, this isocost line, we can call it as factor price line also. Okay, so the factor price line and the isocon curve should be tangential to each other. So that point is the producer equilibrium point. So this tangential point we are taking. So M becomes the equilibrium point. So what it indicates is that as M is the equilibrium point, the producer will be using OC amount of capital and OL amount of labor, and will be producing this 200 units with the budget of 2 lakhs. Very simple. So if he is having 2 lakhs, he can use or he can employ or he can hire OC amount of capital and OL amount of labor, and he can achieve the target of 200 units. Okay, but again there are lots of other points also, no, like we should give an explanation for that. So again you can ask me like why not R or why not T? So this is like it can be in the same isocon curve. So anyhow R, M, T all are going to give the same level of output only, but R and T are there in the highest level of factor price line, that is 3 lakhs rupees. So if you are going to choose a combination of R, or if you are going to choose a combination of T, it means that you have to spend 3 lakhs of rupees, and which will be a loss for you. Okay, so R is a capital intensive technique and T is a labor intensive technique. So according to this producer, what he is saying is he will be happy, or he will be able to produce at 2 lakhs itself if he's choosing a combination of neutral techniques. Neutral means capital and labor in the same ratio or in the same proportion. So he is happy with the neutral technique, and he will be neutral technique. It shows that 1 lakh less amount is being spent to achieve the same 200 units. Okay. So when at M point with the 2 lakhs, if you are able to produce this 200 units, why someone will be choosing R or T, which is costlier? So that also it can do. The same way, like a point somewhere below this cannot be there. Why? Because it means that you are not using your resources properly. Underutilization of resources is there. So normally in business, underutilization of resources should not be there. So whatever the resources which is available for you, you should be properly using all the resources in making the production. So underutilization should not be there. So you will not choose any combination here, or above this level also you will not choose it. Why? Because again that is beyond your limit. It doesn't comes under your investment limit or capacity. It is beyond a certain limits, or beyond a point for which like no need of you to work on. So what is the target? You can just work on the target. So fixing a target and working is very essential in a business, and this is what will be done in a business. So how this is how a producer will be coming to a equilibrium point. So always just to compare it with the consumer equilibrium, the same thing you have to take it and you have to get the points. Sometimes, so sorry, like while explaining also, I might have used indifference curve in the place of isocon, and price line in the place of isocost. Why? Because I'm explaining both the concepts and simultaneously, so I got a little bit confused. Like even though I'm clear on, like sometimes the words that I use, it differs. Okay. So this is what happens in a producer equilibrium. So producer equilibrium, it is very clearly given. So first, they have talked about isocon curves, and then they have talked about isocost line, and then they have talked about production. Same like consumer cycle, consumer equilibrium. First, they will be talking about indifference curve, and then the price line, then the consumers. That's all. So this is how you can relate the theory. So this is the very first theory on production function. So please keep it in mind. Production function actually it studies the relationship between the input and the output combination. So by using how much of inputs, like what level of output can be achieved. So making a calculation of that one is called as a production function. And mainly, like when we talk about, there will be 4 factors of production: land, labor, capital, and organization. But in theories, like traditional theories, if you take, most probably it will be land and labor. But when it comes to the modern theories, it is always capital and labor, which is taken as a 2 important factors, and other factors comes under it. And with that, they are explained. So here, producer equilibrium explained with isocon curve. Isocon curve is nothing but a curve which shows a combination of 2 different inputs, which can be used to produce the same level of output. So whether it is point A or B, the combination differs, but the output that will be produced will be the same, 100 unit. And how we will be choosing A or B? It is not our preferences. It is based on the circumstance. It is based on your area, or it is based on your own business, and it is again based on how this techniques and the labor which is available for you. So based on all these factors, like you will decide upon which combination will be yielding you a better profit, and you will be choosing that. So for that reason, you need an isocost line. So isocost line is nothing but it shows the investment capacity of you. So if you invest the complete amount which is there in your hand for investment on a particular input alone, it will show the maximum limit of that input. So while doing so, if you join both the input maximum combination, you will be getting this isocost line. Again, simply like that is your investment possibility area. So investment limit. So beyond that, we could not go for. Why? Because it is beyond their investment capacity. So just taking by these isocon curves and isocost lines, a tangential point can be selected as the equilibrium point, which will tell you like how to reach a targeted output or targeted production with a combination of 2 different inputs, namely capital and labor. with the investment that is there in your hand, or with the minimum investment that is there in your hand. So that is what is the process. It will be very simple. Just again, like I will be uploading all this material, you can just go through it and you can understand it. And now, if you have any doubts, you can ask me. Let's stop recording.